Hello, Boon.
Hi, Wei Wu.
Long time no see.
Very long time. Hi, James.
Hey there. I'm going to try sit in passively as I cook, so I'm probably not going to say too much, but I'll try listen. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, cool, great. Well, yeah, like I said, I'm probably not going to say much, so I'll just listen in.
I wonder if I resize the window that I'm sharing, would your view change too?
In what way?
Like if I make the window square, will you have a square view?
Oh, what we see is your window within a Zoom window.
Yes, but the viewport inside Zoom, does the height and width ratio change?
It looks
Okay,
rectangular to me.
Observe now, and then I'm going to click a button, and then tell me if the height and width ratio has changed. Okay. I mean the viewport, of course. 1. Hello?
Yes.
I didn't see a change on my phone.
1, 2, 3. Did the viewport change ratio?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so it knows to resize the viewport or reshape the viewport. Interesting.
Yeah, I sent you a message about the ordered view. I realized I'd only put up the PDF when I'd ordered the Alpha Wallet side of things with Victor. So obviously that's not...
I can change the Alpha Wallet part following yours. I've already made modifications on the upper layer.
It's tedious. It's up to you if you want to. Like, I'm not sure if it was just maybe when we did it with Victor, it was just like a good reference. And then from that, we've got the high level idea.
On that level, Sunil is taking Alpha Wallet features into a project list.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So maybe we just let him do his work.
Exactly. That way we don't have to, like, it's just a lot of work if you were going to do it, or if it's not necessary, then I won't do it either.
Let me recap my conversation with Sunil. Sunil says that whether or not in a tech map, every node is a project. I said not. Every node is a technology. And it's really, each technology goes through a different life cycle as a product. For example,
you're talking about the tech tree?
Yes.
Or Yes.
So for example, data object is first spec'd out, like what is the specification, and then implemented. And the implementation might be only for Alpha Wallet, only for website. In any way, it's not a project. So the example I gave him is that you have a skill tree in Skyrim or any of the RPG game, right? So you can have archery skill, and then you can have dual wielding archery skill. No, sorry, you cannot dual wield.
You could. Bow. Very, very talented.
Yeah, but anyway, you get the idea.
Yeah, I get the idea.
But the skill tree you have is not the number of bosses or number of levels. So you don't. If you imagine the bosses or levels are projects, then the skill tree is going along with it, not one-to-one related. So not like this feature is a project, that feature is a project. No, the project is actually by what we do for the business and what we do for Alpha Wallet.
So that sounds good. And Weibu, is our agenda today to go through the tech tree?
Yes, actually I did go through this tech tree once before, but I realized that I should do this once in a while. So I decided to redo it again.
Awesome.
And I also remembered that I didn't show the tech tree to Tor. So that's one thing I wanted to do. Oh, Tor is in here. Hello, Tor.
Hello.
Nice,
I'm here.
nice to have you, Tor. Yeah. So what you're seeing for is the tech tree that we created around September 2019 that I decided to go through it once a half a year, just to so that the thing is, as we work on TokenScript, we sometimes lose lost our way. We don't know where is our position in the game. So TokenScript is in the end a technology to support to realize tokenization, to make tokenization happen, and that's needed to support Web3. That's basically the goal. But each individual piece does not look like directly connected to the goal if you don't know where it is. So what I'm doing here is to have a roadmap, and we go through it once a half a year, I think. Then we see where we are now, where we were before. Yeah, and also like clarification, communication, this kind of thing. So I don't know if James Brown is coming up or not, but I did show James Brown this chart before. But the thing is with James Brown and with everybody else is that sometimes people benefit from doing this again and again. Yeah, so let me see if he's going to show up. How do I know if he's going to show up? Okay, it's 6 minutes already. Fair enough. Let's start. Okay.
Hey, whoa, I'm here.
Oh, James, you are here.
Yes.
Why I'm not seeing you in the list?
But maybe you need to page.
Ah. Anyway, so everybody's here now. That's good. If you look at this, the way it's organized is that features, TokenScript capabilities goes from left to right. There are some undesigned features that doesn't have the XML tag. But for those who ever have XML tag, I have provided tag. Vertically goes these vertical items, which goes up and down, are the projects we want to do with Alpha Wallet, and what kind of capability they depend in TokenScript. Since this is a TokenScript discussion, I'm going to simply hide everything related to Alpha Wallet. Then this is clean view, and we go through this. And if you still want to see the Alpha Wallet thing, we go through it later. Okay. So we have this nice, neat technical roadmap. The most basic component of TokenScript is sorry, not text. Yeah. So the most basic stuff here is cards and expressive trust. Unfortunately, we didn't do expressive trust, but this is really the basic. Otherwise, you don't know how to associate TokenScript with the smart contract. Actually, we did expressive trust, but only with Java and only as a service on AWS Lambda, and that has to be done in a better way so that it can be incorporated into iOS. And these are really everything that this is the first thing we do. But we did cards. That's good, but we didn't do the expressive trust for iOS. And then on top of expressive trust is the new ERC that we're going to propose, so that the smart contract can return what TokenScript it supports. And this is going to give us a lot more finesse. For example, TokenScript, the contract can return support for more recognition, like a trust of more than one TokenScript, or a list, so that you can use that to evaluate TokenScript segments. For example, if you have a shortened TokenScript that only has the relevant feature for the user to do a DVP transaction, then getAdmin allows us to return a finer detail. For example, which digest is supported, which maps to the subsection of TokenScript. Yeah, this will be something that we should have done. Actually, this I don't know what it is should be called nowadays. Is ERC or EIP? We only submitted 4 ERCs, and all of them became EIP. So I thought ERC and EIP are a little bit related now.
So would this be just a new one you propose, or using something like token metadata? Is it deliberate to stay separate from other standards?
Well, if there is already a token metadata spec and it's designed to be extensible so that you can add new elements to it, then we can use that.
Yeah, that's what OpenSea was looking for, because that's what they use, say, for image and name, but we could also put source like TokenScript source.
The important thing is only that internally the smart contract is able to be reconfigured to re-emit different number, a different result as the token script gets updated. So as long as it's not entirely static, it's all right.
Yeah, and the good thing with that is they don't need to redeploy the contract to adhere to a new interface. They could just add to the existing token metadata if they've already implemented metadata.
Yeah. So then we will write some means for contracts to return TS trust relationship. Okay. Okay. So now this is out of the way. Okay, and then we look at data objects. We have been working on data object for a while, and then I haven't done the proper review of TOS attestation based on that object model we proposed before. But data model was discussed in the meeting minutes extensively. Its data object supports quite a lot of features. Attestation, for example, FIFA ticket is a attestation. Sorry, UEFA ticket is a attestation because you don't want all 20,000 tickets to be in smart contract. Then you have check, which is a special type of attestation, which is intended to emit money, which is kind of depend on the contract wallet or money source. Then you have event, where a data model is used to describe an event. I mentioned before that there was a design thinking here where attestations and events are quite similar to each other because attestations are signed or data objects, and events does not need to be signed because it comes from blockchain and has its Merkle proof. Then we have the attribute-based proof, which is used in case, for example, if you want to I use the Steam app example where you want to log into Steam. So we access the Steam shop and you want to prove that you are of the right age to buy a bloody game, a violent game, or that you can prove that you have C equals to AU, which means that you are living in Australia, or C equals to IN, which means you are living in India, so that you can get India specific price for games. That's examples of that. Actually, this also this probably is needed here by the token VM as well. Let's not say too much at this point in time. Identity attestation is actually Tor. We worked on this before. We have this paper in this blockchain attestation project, which probably should be merged into a TokenScript repository. It was initially intended so that someone can attach a identity attestation to show that he is qualified for an ICO investment, but then ICO faded away. And nobody seemed to be interested in proving identity in ICO purchase. They usually do it in out of band, which is you go to the ICO organization, prove your identity, and ICO organization whitelist your address, and then you are allowed to buy the ICO share. And this process seemed to be no problem because it seems people don't have problem trusting the ICO organizations to manage, to have actually evaluated the identity of each individual. So this technology was not put to use because ICO people said they didn't need it. But the concept is really useful as we expect that in the future there will be identity attested transactions in business. One example would be like if you purchased a insurance for a car, then that insurance can be an identity attestation. Sorry, this this is not really good. Identity attestation in the beginning. It's just attested transactions. Yeah, that's what it really should be, because in ICO case we used for identity, individual identity, but it's really generic method to do attested transactions. For example, you might want to engage a transaction where the transaction rule requires the person to have an insured car, or that you want to sell your car and you want to provide an attestation that the car has not been written off before as a condition of the transaction, or not written off at the time of transaction. Virtual token is a concept we talked before. It's the capacity to, it's like having your bank account as a token. Therefore, you can use that token to access related services. So it's just like imagine Google account being a token. Then if you log in with websites as using that Google account, that would be a virtual token use case. Yeah, and then we have the other example is if you have exchange account and you want to see an exchange balance being displayed as a token balance, then you need virtual token. Basically, it's just a attestation that gives to you, that allows you to access web service. In the exchange case, the web service to obtain the balance information. Yeah, and what do I, oh, this arrow is not well placed. Okay, good. Now, going on top of event, there's activity, which is we are doing now, which basically allows the event to have a view. It's useful on the web. It's useful in the user's wallet. Then we have check. I explained check before. DVP itself is technology that should be put here, but I didn't, because somehow maybe I forgot it. I only put DVP context, which means that a context for views. So this is so typically if you have a token view, it displays what this token, like the token balance, token status, the token attributes, whether or not token has expired. That's what in the token view. If it's a car, it displays a car. And in the DVP context, which means the user is ready to engage a transaction, and a view is generated based on the anticipated token. So let's say if you purchase a car, or if you you pay the membership fee to become the member of an organization, then DVP context allows you to render a view of the car you are going to get, or the membership token you are going to get before you check out, so that the users can check that before they actually pay. Render tokens before transaction. Yeah, that's what DVP context is for. Row context is a finer concept of you know what you can have attribute based method to turn an action on and off. Sorry. So yeah, you can have an action. You can have an attribute that turns an action on and off. For example, if you are not an admin, you don't see this action. If you are admin, you see this action. This is a way to control the availability of actions, but really the final way to control it is through rows. So it gives you stuff like if you are the borrower of a car, or if you are the owner of the car, then the actions can, all the token views can display differently. Now, row is finer because you can define a row, you can define multiple rows, and because it affects how the same action would render differently. Unlike only having on-off switch for actions, where you can, if you have a view for the car, if you have an action that should display differently depends on the row, you will have to create two similarly named actions and turn one on and turn the other one off, and later turn the other one on, the previous one off. So that's just not fine.
A question on roles. The Open Zeppelin token contract kind of, I guess, reference implementation, they sort of have changed things around to be roles, like from within the smart contract, like a minter role or a, I can't remember the other ones, like owner role or whatever. There's a few roles at that level. Would those roles potentially be a subset of these TokenScript roles?
So the role is to provide context for views and action stuff.
Yep. So if you're not a minter, you won't see the mint button. But if you have the minter role at the smart contract interface level, would you just have to make a reflection of that in the TokenScript role and say, if I just want a minter role there as well, I would make one there and I'd kind of duplicate it, I guess. Is that right?
Yes, role. If you are okay, let me give you an example of the role. Okay, let's say if you are an owner of the car, you can have the action that lend the car to someone.
I mean, are you familiar with say the minter role of a token? Because it's a simple one to say that of that token, only the minter role can mint.
I don't understand it. I didn't hear it before, but I can guess it.
Mint,
mint simply be some
exactly.
minter.
Yeah. So you can't. Yeah. So that's an easy example. Yeah. And if we say we wanted that concept at the higher level of the token to say, actually, many people can hold the token, but only some people can mint. Would the token issuer have to duplicate that role if they wanted the mint at that in TokenScript? They would have to make it again, or is it? I mean, there wouldn't be potential to read that from the smart contract because it's unique per token implementation. So, yeah, I'm just thinking about how those standards can be reflected up. But I guess as a first pass, we'll just do it there as well, and then maybe in the future we look for big standards of roles like OpenZeppelin's one, and potentially use that.
I may be able to address that if you give a shorter question. That is a long question.
So,
yeah.
So token contracts have roles in them. Do we need to repeat those at TokenScript to respect that same role?
If the token has defined a few roles inside of it, then TokenScript should take care of that, I think.
Because there'll be a require, for example, in the smart contract based on the role. So if you don't have that role, you can't perform that action. The transaction will fail.
Oh, I see. So your question is whether or not
so are you guys talking about the exclusion, like if you've already approved the contract, don't show the action, or if you are an owner, then show the mint function?
Yeah, the latter, the roles.
Yeah. We can. Okay, I'll try two ways to answer the question. Okay, first is that your question. I can. Let me make up your question. That is.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like maybe it will be too much. I'll be quiet again. It's okay.
First, role here is a context. It may or may not be the same as the require modifier of functions. You probably can make it the same, but token role here is a context. It's not a switch. So
I'll share an example out of band. It's defined as roles as well at just a lower level. But never mind. We can look at that later. Thanks anyway.
So here I'm just trying to introduce role as a context. Role as a concept. The contract defined a few roles. Of course, it has always been there, and there's a good chance that you want to define the context for each role. Yeah, just I hope that helps. Yeah.
Sorry, Weiwu, just before going ahead, James Harkey, was that really a suggestion that we should take into account the roles defined at the smart contract level? Was that your suggestion? I thought, I was hearing a suggestion rather than a question.
Yeah, it was a question around if there's any thought already around reflecting roles that major standards like ERC standards libraries like OpenZeppelin are putting in roles. MakerDAO has roles in their contracts as well. Whether we would have a way of reflecting that automatically or not, or whether we want to sort of de facto support some roles that we know are common. It was more of a thought if that's been considered, or are we going to have some duplication where in the beginning we are defining these TokenScript context roles, and they will happen to just be duplicate logic for what the smart contract roles are defined to do in these libraries.
Awesome. I think that, what I'm hearing is that, there are some open source standards around roles. And for me, I'm not sure, I'm not the expert here, but, for me, it feels like, if there are some open source efforts going around.
At a different level. It's at the, lower level.
We should
just the intersection of those.
Yeah. I think that, we should definitely replicate the efforts, and, that might be a food for thought for Weibo to consider. Maybe, it's not defined yet, but, would be good.
Yeah. Let's say if the smart contract has a function called return a list of rows, then we can consider to create a row context automatically for them. That's what you mean here?
Well, that would be something else. Yeah. Well, maybe that's an implementation thing. I wouldn't think that's a good implementation, but that's okay. I'm happy with where we're at. I'll pick it up another time.
Let me. I think maybe that's because I didn't introduce context. I thought it was introduced before. So let's talk about context. Okay. Context is. Okay, so this would probably help. So.
Yeah, it's the same. Yep, same definition. That makes sense.
So context is when is an action, a transaction, a view relevant. So for example, you can define action. You can define a token view, which says that this is a car, and in that token view, you display a car and you display the time of next service, and then you lend this car to a friend who also wants to see the token car in his wallet because he needs to drive the car and he needs to access token functions from the car token. Then your friend will be using a different role as you. Therefore, the view should be different. So your friend probably doesn't care so much as when the car should be serviced again because he's only borrowing for a few days. He might probably care more about the borrowing time limit or like whether or not like how to access emergency services that the original owner purchased. Because when he's in the car accident, maybe the original owner is sleeping, cannot provide such information. So context is what affects actions, transactions, and views. So when I say a row as a context, I mean that the capacity to use row as a context, not as that we invent a concept called row. So here, row to play in the contract is example of a context. So it's already implied that row actually exists. So it's not like we are reinventing the row, or we are inventing how a contract should produce rows. These are not the point of this box. This box is the capacity to use row as a context, not like defines what row is, what should be, what is the standard contract interface to do that. So if there is an open standard for that, I see no reason that why this would conflict with that. Does it make sense?
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, it's good functionality to have at that higher levels, and some of the standard libraries at the token smart contract level will probably shoehorn into maybe a standard implementation at the TokenScript level, but in a certain context. But that's good.
I'm not super clear with the chart myself. For example, here is a DVP context where it's actually assumed DVP DVP security exists. And here's only that the DVP security is used as a context. Here, so I probably should have defined DVP somewhere else. Then status as context, row, sorry. Yeah, and this box, this is weird. I don't know why I draw a line here. Anyway, so these are contests. Mobile app context is the capacity to define context for token to be used in app or game. That is for the capacity to. So one of the example being you may have a CryptoKitty, and you may use the CryptoKitty in 3 games. Let's say Kitty Arena, Kitty Battle, and Kitty Finds Jewelry. Okay, 3 different games. So the fact that you have a kitty means you just bought a kitty, and its icon should be displayed in all three apps. And mobile application context pretty much says that allows the token issuer, the kitty, define how the kitty would look like as an icon in all these games, or how the kitty would look like as a 3D object if they are to be discovered in an RPG game under the table or something. Make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So now coming back here, token VM is actually a pretty important concept. That is, when token runs its token logic, it should be run in a virtual machine. I would call it enclave. I used to call it VM, but later I called it enclave. Nothing slave. I used to call it VM, but later I called it enclave because I realized that when I say enclave, everybody's eyes start to shine. So it must be a good word. So the concept is, let's say if you have a token that can produce a zero knowledge proof, then you certainly don't want this zero knowledge proof to be produced by the JavaScript supplied by the website, because the JavaScript that supplies supplied by the website already knows your token attributes. There's no need to produce a zero knowledge proof of everything because they already knows. Similarly, if you have a token that would check your balance and tell you that your balance is sufficient for the following transaction, this logic should be run in the token VM instead of the JavaScript supplied by the website, because then the website would have learned your balance. This token VM is the container to run token logic. The token logic can have a view, or it can have a no view. Either way, they are carried. They are embedded in the executable portion of a token script, and was run in the virtual machine on the user agent. We will probably not implement this in this year, partly because it's a lot of trouble, partly because people seem to not to care that the fact that they are generating zero knowledge proof in the website, as people already have such websites, and people seem to be happy with that. So we try not to produce the solution to the problem when the problem has not surfaced. But ultimately, to support Web3 model of having the user interact with web services through tokens, a virtual machine is needed. Yes, I think that's basically it. Yes. Okay. Now, token negotiation. And have I talked about this before? In TokenScript design meeting session? Nobody said yes, so I guess I didn't. Did I?
I think that it would be good to go through it again, maybe. I know that.
Anyway, it's a pretty important topic. I think I must have talked about it before. So
yeah, but at a high level, would be good to go out again. I know that we had a discussion about it earlier, but just
okay.
to bring
it. So token negotiation is a Web3 feature, and it doesn't make sense on the user wallet. So it's really related to the web service. What it does is what it does is imagine that you visit a website, and the website's content is customized based on what tokens you have, or based on what token functions you use. So one example is, let's say you have Qantas Mall, which sells stuff. And if you have a token that represents your ownership of, let's say, 3 million Qantas points, which is airline point, then by the virtue of having this token, the website will display items in the mall in Australian dollar as well as in Qantas points, where the Qantas point might have a better discount. Suppose you have an American Express privilege. So let's say one of the American Express privilege is being able to return the product if its price has changed. then or that being able to have a longer warranty, then the virtue of having a user having that token means that during the checkout process, the user will not be presented with the option of extending the warranty to 3 years, because the user will get it anyway through the use of American Express privilege. And the third example would be if you have a attestation of your government identity, then that's a token which allows you to purchase alcohol without having to prove legal drinking age. Basically, imagine the future where this is it's easier to prove age. Maybe the website will not ask you for a date of birth anymore. They simply check if you have the right token that can prove you have the right age. Of course, that proof has to be done anonymously. So in our imaginary Qantas Mall, you can use Qantas Point. You can use American Express privilege, or you can use proof of age. All of these on the same website. So the website would respond differently, depends on what tokens you have. Basically, that's token negotiation. In the design.
Just please. On that, the token negotiation, that's around the terms, the attributes interoperability. Is that when we say interoperability of tokens, this component touches upon that?
If you say attribute interoperability, it's definitely is used in token negotiation. It's not the same thing, but it's definitely used as a base component. You need to do that. For example, if you want to prove your age,
discoverability,
yeah. So what token negotiation does is token negotiation allows the website to provide a filter, and any filter would contain stuff like object class and attributes. For example, the website might produce a. I think I talked about this before, but let me type it here again. So let's say object class equals to government ID and expiry
Yeah, I guess I was just asking broadly, when we say discoverability and interoperability, it sounds like this feature is a big part of that.
So look at this expression. This expression is the website tries to say, we are going to sell you alcohol. Do you have a government ID that hasn't expired that says your birthday is
I understand.
later than this year? And if you do have such a token, and if that token supports like anonymous proof or even zero knowledge proof, then this is done in the background. You don't even see anything. You don't even see the message saying that you need to prove your age to continue. You simply can access alcohol because you're using the right browser with the right token in it. If the token actually required users to consent, because this is a very sensitive one. For example, the website is asking very specifically, do you live in certain suburb? Then when the website asks this information, the browser might give a pop-up and say that you're going to produce a proof to show that you are in Gordon, living in Gordon, Sydney. Are you going to do that? And you click yes, and then the website starts to be rendered. Or the website is already rendered, but you click yes, and then website changes to reflect the fact that you are living in Gordon.
And that threshold of when a question is user is prompted or not, that's at the user's discretion. Like, do they identify data as sensitive and say, prompt me if this is requested, or just any attestation requested
So the actual user experience design is really tricky. Tomac has produced a few design examples. So one example,
or just more so the conditional logic, like, yeah, I mean, not necessarily how it manifests, but like in views, but where is the criteria set to say this needs to tell the user or this doesn't need to tell the user?
Oh, that is in TokenScript.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. So that's what TokenScript is for. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Cool. I know. It is repeating the same thing, but yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So this is an example of token negotiation, and since we touched this topic, I might as well distinguish token negotiation with a token as account. So What you can do with the Ethereum is you can log in as the Ethereum address using the Ethereum private key to sign a attestation, sign a challenge, and log into a website. So token negotiation is different from that is in the sense that token negotiation doesn't have to be a user experience process. Token negotiation can happen in the background automatically. It doesn't have to be connected with existing concept like account. The thing with account is account usually represents the relationship between the user and the website. We can see that because usually people don't want to have more than one account for the same website. It's difficult to manage. So if you have attached token functionality a lot to the accounts, then the accounts has to keep update itself to make sure the tokens are still valid and user. For example, if you have a FIFA ticket and you all log into booking.com, and you will get special package service for FIFA ticket holder. Then if it's attached to the account, then when you sell the FIFA ticket, the account status has to be updated so that you know that this guy no longer have the ticket, the booking, the privilege to book the package. So it's just basically a complex mess if you want to attach this token negotiation into account. So that's a separate logic. Token negotiation doesn't define where do you store information like token attributes or how the website handles it. It only defines the process at which it is done. So it only says that how does website acquire information about token and present token functionalities to the user, and it doesn't care about how the website do with it, and whether or not it's attached to account or whether or not it's just instantly updating a React.js interface. It's really up to the website. So so far so good. If you still don't understand, you can throw these questions at me. I guess it's good, right? Okay, so we have only 3 minutes left. Every time I try to control the meeting under 45 minutes. Contract template is an old concept to allow contract code to be embedded in TokenScript so that a user is able to deploy contracts without having to go through all the learning curve. Because sometimes the user will find useful to have to deploy a contract of his own. The scenario that needs the contract template has not surfaced. We don't have a use case that requires it, but it is there as a concept. OpenWhisper is just an example of where we can build information channel to float orders, like market channel. Market channel basically means that where orders are floating so that the buyer can buy the seller's asset without buyers being awake or using his mobile phone. And I think that at this point, I explained everything. Flow, if we have status as context, we have status because we have event. But being able to use status as a context is another feature. And that would allow us to support flow. For example, you need to choose the side of the coin, and I need to choose the side of coin, and then we do a 2-up game. That would be a flow. Or red packet would be a flow, where the game ends after quite a few transactions. Or that we can support a channel, which is TokenScript ways to connect a status channel on the web. Again, nobody's reinventing stuff here. We are not reinventing state channel. It's already there. It's just a TokenScript way of allowing token issuers to connect their token with a state channel compatible website. Just like we have row here, doesn't mean that we invented something called a row. It's just allowing user to program it as a context. And here we have channel, which is allowing the developers to program how the tokens should open and close channel with websites or even with the apps on their mobile phone. Yeah. So that basically that's the TokenScript roadmap. We have 1 minute left, and if you have questions, you can stay. If you don't have questions, you can leave if you like. Oh, by the way, we have a drinking party, do we? Sunil?
Yes, same place, and I've also cracked open a beer, so I think that I'm already on there. But yeah, we can continue the discussion after this. Yeah.
Okay, so do we still live in the meeting room for the drinking?
Yeah, let's use the same meeting room.
Yeah, yeah.
But I would like to have the recording of this one though. So let me do one thing. I will post the new link on Telegram, and people who are interested can join in, so that we don't get all the recording of banter into this latest recording of our
Okay, so do we need to log off and log in back in?
Yeah, log off, and I will send another link, and let's log on to that.
Okay, give a minute for any questions, especially Boon.
Okay, since you
because
asked.
if Boon asks a question, I know I didn't do my introduction job well.
Okay, well, one quick one then. You mentioned that token negotiation is basically a background process, but
it can be.
Yes,
depends on TokenScript author. If you write a TokenScript saying that every negotiation has to be explicit, then yeah.
Yes, and you gave an example where if zero knowledge proof is supported, but even with that, isn't there a privacy concern? Because a service can then potentially check if I am older than 18 and or other dimensions, thus building up a profile of the user.
Oh, yes, yes. So there are two things. First is that the TokenScript author decides whether or not they ask users. And second, if they do ask users, then the TokenScript authors decides how this information is stored. So let's say the website might ask you, pop up, the TokenScript author might say that if this is a government ID token, and anytime if a website wants to check your age, the website will post there and you have to say yes. And if you can also click checkboxes that yes for this website in the future. You can do this. Or this website might do, or maybe this is not that sensitive. For example, you have American Express. This is a token where actually the TokenScript author wants you to use it on merchant's website automatically because it gives you a special discount. It can even provide internal whitelist of partner websites, but it's really up to the TokenScript author. And some users, the question of whether or not TokenScript authors will use this to abuse users' privacy have not been well thought of.
So it comes back to basically the user has to trust the TokenScript.
At the present, that's the model in my head. If we can predict this is going to lead to abuse, we might change it.
Okay, okay. Sounds good.
So we might change it. For example, the website has to, a TokenScript author has to provide a whitelist and cannot blanket support the use of their token on any website, or that every token is by default not used on the website. But if the website shows a token negotiation query like this, I want this token, then the tokens that matches the selection criteria will be highlighted on the browser bar and allowing the users to click to enable it.
Okay.
And if it's React, then the user click and enable it. The web page should update only the part that is relevant.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. Just this question? If so, then 3, 2, 1, drinking.
Yes.
Okay. I'll log off and join your new link, Sunil.
I've pasted that in Telegram. It's available in the chat. So yeah.
Yeah, Tor is not in Telegram, but he typically doesn't participate in drinking because it's morning there, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or wants to join, it's also on the Zoom chat. So everybody.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Put it on Zoom chat. Yeah. Chat. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Have fun.